Hello everyone, welcome back. My name is Pretty and this is Clarity Cuts. And today I got an audio transmission that I want to share with everyone. So before we begin, let's just pause. Take a breath in through your nose and a slow exhale through the mouth. Take another breath. There's nothing to fix right now. Nothing you need to understand perfectly. So today's audio transmission is the voices are not you. And most people, they believe voices in their mind are them. They assume that whatever is speaking internally, it must be their identity. It must be their truth, their intuition. But that's merely just an assumption. And it's this assumption where the suffering actually begins. Because the voices that you're hearing in your mind, they're not you. They don't belong to you. And they didn't originate from your essence. And that means that they're not evidence of who you are. So let's talk about what they actually are. And I believe these inner voices are conditioned recordings, like echoes that repeat. And they're made of, tones that maybe you heard growing up, or reactions that you may have learned to anticipate. Authority voices, you absorbed when you were a child. Emotional survival strategies, social, cultural pressures, fear loops that were just repeated often enough for it to sound familiar now to you. And these voices, they were installed. They weren't born. They're memory patterns, not intelligence that lives. So if you listen closely enough, you'll notice something very important. And that's that these voices, they repeat. The voices judge you. They rush. They narrate over and over in your mind. They dramatize things. They make it sound like it's urgent or disappointed or corrective. And that alone should tell you something. That if this was truly you, it would not need to be repeated. It would not need repetition. Because your true awareness doesn't nag. And it doesn't threaten you. It doesn't argue. It merely observes. It knows. And it responds only when it's needed. And the awareness voice, it's soft. The voice that you hear, that's loud, that's insistent and looping, it's not consciousness. It's conditioning, trying to stay relevant in your world. You see, the voice itself is not the problem. The problem is identification. We identify to that voice. And the moment you believe, this is me thinking, that loop gains power. And not because this is true, but because attention, your attention, it fuels it. So when you argue with the voice, it continues. Even when you resist the voice, it still continues. When you try to replace it with affirmations, often it continues. Because all of those responses still assume the voice deserves to be engaged, but it doesn't. It only exists as long as it's believed, as long as it's resisted, or debated. The mind doesn't suffer. Identification suffers. So here's the shift. Here's where things can change. You don't silence the voice by force, nor do you eliminate it through any amount of effort. And you don't overpower the voices. You simply observe. Because observation creates distance. And the moment you notice, oh, there's a voice talking, instead of, this is me thinking, this is me talking. As soon as you notice that, something loosens. Awareness then steps back. And when awareness steps back, the loop then begins to collapse on its own. And this is powerful. You're not trying to stop the thought, or judge it, or fix it. You're simply just seeing it. Like watching a cloud, pass through the sky. The cloud doesn't need to be chased away. It just moves because it has no substance of its own. Thought loops are the same. They exist only while being engaged. And observing, that will starve the loop. Silently, quietly. And you may notice something else when you observe. That the voice, it doesn't know what to do when it's not responded to. It briefly gets louder, and that's normal. But that's conditioning checking to see if it has access still. So you don't need to react to that either. Just notice. And then you can say, interesting. There it is again. And that noticing alone is freedom. So where silence actually comes from? Well, silence doesn't come from effort. It comes from being present. And your presence doesn't live in the mind. It lives in your body. So next time, instead of trying to quiet the voice, bring your attention down into what you're feeling, the sensation, into your breath, into weight, into stillness. And you can do things like feel your feet, your hands, feel your breath moving in and out. When presence is online, the voice has nowhere to land. It simply dissolves. And not because you fought it, but because it's no longer needed. And this is important. Because silence isn't something you achieve. Silence is actually what remains when you drop all the identification. Your mind may still produce thoughts, sure, but they pass through without ownership. You no longer identify yourself with them, and they no longer define you. And over time, they just simply lose their urgency. And you'll start to recognize the difference between mental noise and quiet knowing. Because knowing doesn't shout. It doesn't repeat itself. It just arrives, complete and whole. And it feels grounded and neutral and clear. And often it comes from stillness, not from thought. So if you're listening to this and you recognize those voices in your mind, if you've believed them, if you've ever fought them or tried to just silence them, shut them out, Just know it's normal. You're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just, you were never taught that you don't have to identify with them. Awareness is always here. It's always watching. It's always waiting. So just remember, you're not the voice. You're the one who hears it. And you're not the thought. You are the space in which thought appears in. And space, as we know, is untouched. So take one more slow breath. When you're ready, you can return to your day without carrying that voice with you. Give it a go. It was never yours to begin with. So I leave you all with that, sending you all lots of love throughout your day, wherever you may be in the world. And thank you so much for joining me.